I reviewed the Microsoft website, and what I found didn't make me very happy at all. It actually made me quite angry. In today's video, I'm going to go through the user experience and user interface of the Microsoft website and why there is a lot of room for improvement. So let's just jump right into it. If you haven't already, hit like and subscribe, and let's have a look at the Microsoft website. Now let's have a look over here, and we can pull the website up. I'm just going to move the screen over to the right so that you guys can see this, and let me know in the chat once this is up and running. Here for the Microsoft website, we actually have a few things happening. And if we take a look, I've got my little cursor here. We're going to take a look at this whole design to see what's going on here and how we can improve it. So the first thing I'd like to do is to have a look at the first most obvious thing, which is this large giant pop-up. Now I've already selected no thanks to this a few times, but this is actually quite annoying and in the way. I don't feel it's actually serving much of a purpose. And it's one of those things that might cause a user just to leave the website. You won't see this on other big popular websites like, for example, Apple. They're not going to use Safari, yet Microsoft thinks that they need to force you to use their browser. So this is just one of those things that I would recommend removing. Let's have a look here at the chat to see what other people think. Look, so we have a few people here already. Let's see, we've got Floor and Pop. Hello, how are you going today? We've got a few more people here. We can see that the chat is now starting up, and this will help us do a better review because we get a few more comments and people can give their own opinions. So the very first thing I wanted to point out, obviously, is this section here at the top of the website. This is sort of always popping up whenever I visit the website. Do you guys think that this is a good user experience for visiting the Microsoft website, or do you think it's a little bit annoying? So our first comment here is, I hate Microsoft Edge. Well, that's unfortunate, but I do hear that sometimes quite often. Here we've got one from Max. Max says that he thinks that the pop-up is good. So why do you think that, Max? So he said that they've rebuilt the Edge browser here in Chromium. Okay, that's really cool. So now it's actually sort of like Chrome, I guess. I guess that makes it a little bit more secure. You'll have more extensions there. So I guess that's... It doesn't unfortunately say here anywhere that it's built on the Chromium browser. It just says it's a new browser. And since we've gone through so much of IE 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, I don't even know where it went up to. A lot of people don't know that it's fundamentally changed. So new icon in there, I think saying that it's built on the Chromium engine might go a long way here for the user experience, just so people realize it's a better browser. Let's see what other people say here. Not really. It's annoying because it blocks the view. So yes, it does sort of push the page down a little, almost like a little banner ad there that you didn't really ask for. But I guess it could always be worse. It could be a pop-up, and no one really likes pop-ups in the middle of their page either. What do we have here as well? Yes, you're right. Google does do that. Google prompts you to open it in Chrome. Yeah, I guess so. What we have here. Hello, Adrian. I'm going well. Adrian, recommend people using Edge. Some of my friends have tried it and they love it. All right. I personally haven't used Edge, but if some of you guys have, let me know, and that'll be interesting to know if that is actually quite a good browser in terms of security and speed and... I heard you say Pop. Yes, I did say Floor and Pop. Hello. No one outside of the dev community really cares what Edge is built on. I guess that makes sense. A lot of us usually use things like Firefox or Chrome, and these provide really good dev tools for us to be able to inspect the console as well as CSS. So that is one of those things that's very useful. All right, let's see what else we have here. So I'm just gonna swap their cameras over here. You guys can see what's going on. So our next one here is our next design. So from a design point of view, we have, let's select to close this off now. We have our big hero image here. And for our hero image, we also have our menu here at the top and a couple of different options. I'd like to start off obviously with the menu here. And we've got quite a large menu, but this menu sort of works in different ways. So let's take a look at it quickly. If we select any of these items here on the left, it takes us, ooh, okay, that's sort of crashed. Let's reload the page. So if I select this one here, it takes us to a new page. And I think that does it for most of them. So if I select Windows here, that'll take us to a new page. But if I select the item here on the right, it's a drop down. So that's okay. But I'm just wondering if this drop down could actually be a hover, or if it's better for it to be a clickable item. I know that a lot of people these days, when they just hover, oh, that's very odd. So if I select it here, it stays on there. And if I click anywhere on the page now, it's not going away. Only until I click at the bottom. So that's a very odd use case there for this section here. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Personally, I think that with this item here, it would be a lot better if it just hovered and dropped down rather than me having to manually click it. Let's take a look what the comments think about that. So here, let's have a look here. Yep, the dev tools are the same. All right, no comments yet. The next item here I wanted to have a look at is the search button. Now, there's a few odd things happening here. The first is that when you select this search icon, it sort of blanks out the whole menu and expands out all the way to the left. That's a little bit odd. I would expect it maybe to use this much space. To utilize the whole width is a little bit odd. At least it does do a automatic focus, so that's useful. The other thing with that though, is that if we take a closer look at this search icon here and select it, you'll notice that there is a little bit of issue here on the positioning. So let me just zoom that into 125. And select. If we look closely here, there's more padding here at the top than there is at the bottom. This simply means that they haven't centered this or aligned it perfectly in the middle. The offset at the top, or the padding at the top here, is essentially larger, and it looks sort of like it was just positioned all over the place, really. Even if we have a look at the logo, it's not really even aligned properly here to the left. Realistically, it should go across a little bit more here, so that it actually aligns with the banner. And that's the same here for this cancel button. It should expand out here to where the banner ends. So those are some design aspects I would probably recommend to clean up, simply so that the design looks a little bit better too. If we take a really close look though, we'll see that the icon here has more margin at the top than it has here at the bottom as well. So that's a very odd thing, but just a few of the examples of how the design could be improved here for this input. Let's see what people think here in the chat so far. So yes, hover on all Microsft drop-downs would be useful. So yes, I agree with that. Let's see what else we have. Cool. The UI is the thing I love most about Edge. So a lot of people do seem to like Edge, I guess, in terms of its performance so far. Now the next thing I wanted to have a look at for the UI is this big hero image here. Something you might not notice is that when you hover over it, then the actual tabs here on the left and the right, they exist without any sort of margin. They're almost right here on the left, and they only sort of appear when you hover over. That's fine, but there's no animation there or anything like that. They just suddenly appear. And what I'd really like to see is that if we were using these, let's move this over here and see if I can't really select that, but if these, how can I select this? My brush is way too large. Here we go. So if these, wow, why is my brush so big? Sorry guys, just a sec, having some technical difficulties. There we go, let's remove that. So these tabs here with the arrow, they realistically should show up a little bit further from the left. There should be some padding there because it looks a little bit odd when they're hitting the corners. So what I would recommend here is for them to sort of exist almost with a little bit of space here, and that would look a lot better than how they're currently looking, hitting the edges. Do you guys think that they could also be a little bit bigger, or what do you think? Let's see what we have here. At Microsoft, can you please come here and make your website the best? Thanks for the comment. True, I think this square is more thanks to the round buttons on Chrome. Yes, more stuff on that. Okay. Now let's have a look at the rest of the design. So in terms of the banner design, this looks more or less okay. I don't mind the fonts and everything here, but we do notice that while everything is aligned perfectly here to the left, if we gauge here, we'll notice that this Black Friday text isn't aligned properly. It actually seems to have a little bit of a margin here from the left, and maybe this is because it's an invisible red button or something like that, but it is one of those things that I can notice really obviously that it's sticking out there and it's off to the side and it doesn't look very good. So it's a small topography or UI layout issue. Probably not going to cause any problems, but it's these little things that us UI designers, or when you're looking in terms of the graphics design, we notice these little things and I think they stand out quite a lot. Let's move on to see what else we have here. So in terms of topography, I think this design is okay. Let's have a look. We've got the Black Friday text here, but and then Black Friday text there. The font actually increases a little bit between those two slides as well. I'm not too sure why that Black Friday text is increasing, but it is changing a little bit. Otherwise, the topography more or less is okay for that. So let's move on to the next section here, and let's see the chat as well to see what's happening. So yes, they've recently changed the icons. Icons are different for the Chromium. I would add transitions to the arrows when they appear. Yes, that'd be a good idea here for these ones. The next thing here is to have a look at these buttons and their hover effect. So if we take a look at these, I want to point out a few things here. The first is that we have more space here. Now let's cancel this out and make it in red. We have more space here at the top than we have at the bottom. So this might be something like, say, 50 pixels, and this looks like it's something like 65 pixels. So this means that it doesn't feel like it's perfectly in the center again, and it's just one of those things that when you combine all of the positionings like this, it just makes the website look a little bit all over the place rather than having a nice tidy look. But that's okay, we can leave that for the time being and have a look at what else is happening on this page. So the other thing that I can see here is that they're not using Svg Graphics. What this means is that these icons here, when you watch them on a high DPI monitor or when you zoom in, I'm not sure if you can see that, they come out pixelated, which makes them look like they're really low quality. It also means that obviously they use more space when you're loading them over the web. So these, if you turn these into SVGs, they would look way better, no matter what size you're in. So that's another thing that I think could be easily fixed up here in this design. And the final thing is that these hovers are just boring. It's just an underline on hover. There's so many different interactions and animations you could do for these hover states. You could even pull in maybe some of those red colors here. These are sort of underutilized in terms of the animation anyway. Let's see what the chat thinks about these sections here. So here we have, let's see. Yes, I agree. Pixel difference is small, but it adds up. So there's 65 pixels at the top and 50 pixels at the bottom. Let's see, what am I using to draw? This is a tool called Epic Pen. It lets me draw on the screen, which is really cool. Hey, is there any update on the book? So I'm writing a book for design, which is helping developers do a little bit of design better. It's called Enhance UI, and it's something that I think would be useful for a lot of people to learn because it teaches you those fundamental rules to follow, just so that design looks a little bit better. Sometimes those rules aren't very clear, but they're sort of like TypeScript, so if you follow them, you'll always have a good looking website. Let's continue on and have a look at what's next here. So that's a good point. In the chat here, we've got a comment that says that these icons aren't the right size. They're actually different size. So let's have a quick look at that. So yes, this one looks like it's about this size here and this size here, whereas this one looks way smaller. Yes, this one again looks way bigger, really small, and medium size. So yes, they're sort of all over the place with sizing as well. There isn't a great bit of consistency there. So I think there's a lot of improvement that could have been done there as well. So that's a really good comment. Let's see what else we have here. How to get perfect JavaScript. Any tips? Perfect JavaScript is called TypeScript. What's my favorite browser? That would currently be probably Chrome. Simply because I've used it for a long time. I know how to use the dev tools, and that's one of the most important things to me when I'm doing a lot of my development and design. So I'm going to move on here to the next section. And in this section, we've got a lot of these main action points. So we've got one here for free accessories, Microsoft 365, Xbox games, and Season of Giving. And let's see what we can take away from these designs here. So in terms of the actual pictures themselves, I think they're perfectly fine. The sizing, the aspect ratio, and everything is good. But what I'd like to take a look at is probably the animation here on the buttons. That's really nice. I like how there's a little bit of animation here on the chevron right. The font sizing looks okay as well. Not too much. The only main thing that I would say is that it feels like there's too much space between the section here and here. So let's make that a little bit more obvious. So these sections here, they've got quite a lot of padding there. It's almost as much padding as we have here and here. So it almost disconnects these two sections simply because we have this same amount of padding here at the top. I would say that this section should use a little bit less padding, and that would make it look a little bit better. Let's see if I can actually even fix that up in the DevTools. So this is the H3 class, and this is using 37 pixels at the top, and I'm going to reduce that to 15 pixels. And already there, just doing that one change, I feel like the picture and the text is a lot more connected now and looks a lot better. So this is what I mean by just these small changes in UI can have a big effect. Let's see if I can undo that now. I don't think I can. Let's put that back to 37 pixels, and now you can see it feels a lot more disconnected. Let's see what the chat thinks about that as well. So here we have yes, boring underline hovers, only color will bring the website to life. I envy you to sit in shorts. Yes, it's so hot here in Australia. Can you animate things on load and scroll with CSS? Is there an easy way to do this? So the answer to that question is yes. There are some great libraries out there called animate.css and wow.js. Both of those work together so that you can essentially do animations on the window scrolling into a div or something like that. So check out those two libraries, wow.js and animate.css. Next up, let's see what else we have here. What's your favorite programming language? Right now, probably JavaScript. Thank you. I do try to have a good microphone because I hear that YouTube is half audio and half visual, so I hope that helps. CTA are not aligned to the bottom. So by CTA, do you mean these links here? They should all exist aligned at the bottom like that. Is that what you mean? Also, we have the shop now. For 6 people, links can be a button. So let's see here. Shop now. Yeah, I guess some of these could turn into buttons rather than links. It looks a little bit odd when we have, say, 2 links here, and there are so much spacing in between them, lists or something like that. So buttons might actually look a lot better in this case. And even this section feels like it could work with having a main button and maybe a secondary button in some of these cases, and that would look much better, I think. Let's see what else we have. Yes, 15 pixels here. was much better because it connects those two things together. So yes, I agree with that. Let's see the next section that we have here. So this is a nice big section called latest PCs. There's not too much here. We've just got a main image, and then we have a call to action with some text and some more text here. Now, something I'd like to point out is that when you have a big section like this, sometimes you don't have to keep it as a square inside of the container. Sometimes it's useful if you just expand it all the way out. And that way, if you fill in this gray, it'll look a lot better because it'll fill out the whole page and make the content look a little bit more dynamic. So that's one thing I recommend for this section. The other thing is that this button and its text looks almost as big as this header text. And when you have a large section like this, one of the things I normally recommend is to make this text here a lot bigger. So as this example, if we go into it, no, don't really. Okay, I didn't notice this. This entire section here, this whole block is one clickable button. And that really annoys me. That drives me a little bit mad because this is not the user experience I was expecting. I was expecting only this one button here, just this one here, to be the clickable item. And I wanted to select some text here. And yet when I select it here, the whole thing was a button that took me to another page. So I feel like that's a user experience that could really be improved. What do you guys think of that in the chat? The whole box here being a clickable item rather than just the button. Let's see here. So yes, that was quite hilarious is our first comment. Yes, that would be really annoying. So I agree with that too. What else do we have here? Hello, I'd like to make animations in React. When users are scrolling, is there an NPM package for that? There is a JavaScript variable to detect scroll, so I would recommend checking that out, and that might be able to solve your use case. Yes, the shop now button should be the only hyperlink. This is very bad, especially in terms of UX. So agreed for that. And there's our next recommendation, and something that is really important to take note of. Whenever you're doing any sort of work, make sure that the user experience is consistent with what is designed here. And in this case, it wasn't. I'm going to have some water here. Hello, Danny. How are you going today? Okay, so the other thing I was saying earlier is that I wanted to inspect this element with this text because I think latest PCs in this one section could be bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to inspect it here. I'm going to do a font size here of maybe something like 50 pixels. And wow, there's a bit of a weird margin thing happening here. What is that? Min height 50 pixels. There we go. So what I was saying is that in this section alone, I feel like this piece of text for the H2 could be a lot bigger. And then, for example, this next section here, margin top, -5 pixels. There we go. So with larger text like this, it might look a little bit better because we do have a large image and we have a large button here that says shop now. But the very first thing that people should see is the main title here. And previously when we had a look at this, the main thing they first see is this shop now button. They don't even know what they're shopping for. So that's why I would recommend having this header a lot larger. And it's again one of those UI things where you want the hierarchy of what you're presenting to meet the expectations of the user. So that's the title should be the biggest. Maybe the call to action is the second biggest. And the third is obviously a description, which is this text here. I don't like the big button, misclicks. Looks incredible. Adrian, thank you, Danny. Color scheme is good. Yes, for Christmas so far, these colors and the red, and essentially because Microsoft does have a red color in there, it does look okay, so I don't mind that. And call to actions and sales, the red color does work in this case in terms of UI. Alright, so let's see what else we have here today. So I'm going to move down to this next section. And this section here is for business. Now, this is an entire section, but this, wow, that text is too big. Let me just make that a little bit smaller. So this is our for business section. But what you'll notice is this header here, which seems like a H2 block, and this header here, which seems like a H3 block, they're the same size. And this is another thing where in terms of topography, you probably want one bigger than the other. At least in this case, I would probably say that this one should be bigger, just so that you know that you're in the business section now, and it doesn't make these texts seem like they're new sections again. Let's have a look here what we have in the comments in regards to that. So yes, the text is too large. I see Max is programming everywhere now. Yes, that's probably true. Thanks, love your setup, background, lights, etc. Yes, I do put quite a bit of effort into all this setup here, simply because I think that, well, I try to reinvest all the effort that I get from to doing better YouTube. So hopefully that comes across. Now we've already gone through a similar section like this here above, so I'm not going to really redo that. So we can move straight to the next section here towards the footer. So I've got this section here, and I feel like there's almost not enough space here between these two sections. Let's have a quick look. So what's going on here? There we go. So I'm just going to grab a thicker line. So this section here, if we take a look at it right now, then it only has a tiny little bit of padding between the section above it. And I feel like that's not enough to really convey that this is a new section. So one of the things that I would normally do in this section is give it a bit of margin here from the top. So that should be pretty easy to do. I'll do that right now. Margin, top, maybe something like 80 pixels. And simply doing that just gives it a little bit more room there, so we can really tell it's a new section. When it was up there before, it just felt too close. And when you have items which are too close, what will end up happening is that it feels overwhelming for the user, and they almost don't want to read it. So by giving it a little bit of white space, a bit of negative space as they say, you're drawing your eyes more to this section by doing so, and I think that's really useful. Let's see what the comments think about that. Do you think more space is better or less? The spacing is inconsistent on this site, which is a little bit distracting, yes. So I do agree, like even for this section here, the spacing between these items and the items below. So when I mean that, I mean, let's grab the text here. So we've got this spacing here, which is about, say, 30 pixels. And then this spacing here, which is about 60 pixels. You know, that's not very consistent. You would want it to be 30 as well. And you want to have a consistent spacing throughout the whole design. So each section should ideally have about 100 pixels. But sometimes here it's about 50 pixels. Then here it felt like it was 30 pixels. So it's a little bit all over the place. Let's cancel all this out and keep having a look. What else do we have here? Yes, the text inside the gray area is a little bit cramped. So yes, I agree with that too. This is another example of how we're almost not using our space very well. So if we take a look at the space in this box, in terms of the padding from the top, let me make this cursor a little bit smaller. How do I do that? Here we go. So the padding here at the top and the bottom, which actually is even smaller. Let's make it a little bit smaller just here. This little tiny INSI bit, which is about, say, 10 pixels, and this one is about 25 pixels. It feels like it's almost being shrunk into this box, and it's not very nice in terms of a user experience. And again, it makes me not want to read this piece of text. So in order to fix that up for this banner section here, I would probably say giving it some padding from the top of maybe, say, 90 pixels, or maybe a little bit less, maybe 50 pixels, and then padding from the bottom, 60 pixels, and let's hit enter on that. And just doing that alone sort of already looks a little bit better because we've got some more room for the text there. I would even say that it could do with a little bit more padding for the top section here. So let me do, say, 60 pixels as well. And we can see that that message is already a lot more clear. The final thing here is like the Learn More button. It doesn't have a strong call to action. It's just feeling like a piece of text. So having that maybe as a button might also work a lot better. Let's take a look at the chat to see what other people are thinking here. So the Learn More button should have a color so people notice it's a link. Yes, I agree with that. So either a button or a different color would help people realize that is a link. What else we have here? What are we doing these days? We're reviewing the Microsoft website design to see what UI and UX tips we can give them. Let's have a look again. The Learn More link can be a button, so I agree. Going to fire web developers after seeing this. I hope not. Hopefully this just gives them inspiration on how to improve their design, but I might have made a bit of a harsh introduction, so hopefully that should be okay though. Let's see what's next. So finally we have Follow Microsoft. And if we take a look at this section here, we've got all our links, and these are okay. I do feel like there's a little bit too much space between each one of them. So we could probably reduce the amount of space between each here, because right now they feel like they're just, either you make them bigger or you reduce the space, but right now they feel like they're too far apart. And let's have a look at the footer here. So this footer is quite overwhelming, but I don't particularly see not that many issues with it. I guess, let's see, we've got what's new, Microsoft Store, education, nice good H3 blocks here with some nice list items. I guess I think I would feel better if this was a little bit more engaging. So maybe like an icon at the top of each one, and maybe a little bit less room, because of the way it is now. It just feels like there's so much that it's a little bit overwhelming. And this is sort of just essentially redoing the menu that we have anyway. So something more like help me find something, like a contact us page or a search button. I think that would be useful to have here, because if someone's made it all the way to the footer and they haven't found what they're looking for, you'd probably either expect them to contact you or you'd expect them to do a search. But if you have all these links here and they haven't already found what they're after, it's very unlikely they'll find it here. So this is why I probably would recommend the search or the contact section. Let's see what other people think about that as well. So which is better, a button or a tag? So in this situation, it depends on what you're after. If you're looking for a low call to action item, just a tag or a link is enough. If you're after a high action item, a button is better because it stands out a lot more. This has become a bit old, yeah. The footer is fine, but it could be a little bit smaller. Yes, I agree with that. In following Microsoft there is too much padding below the Follow Microsoft section. So let's have a look at that. So yes, there is less padding here and there's more padding here. It's probably only about like 3 pixels, but it's not perfectly centered. So that's a good catch there. Microsoft.com is the website we're currently viewing. Yes, and hello, AU. So let's clear all of this out. And now we're going to take a look at the mobile design. Now, hopefully I'm not going to be too harsh on this, but let's give it a quick refresh. And let's zoom it out. I'm going to open up Chrome and we'll start off with tablet. So this is tablet. It's okay. Let's refresh it here, and I'm going to zoom it in a little bit for you guys. Let's go maybe say 150. Let's see, the footer might benefit from not being a set width with columns so that there's better spacing between the columns and they feel better. It's unconventional but may help. There's another comment, which is nice. Now here's the tablet view. What I do like is that this slider fits in nicely here, but here's an issue. It looks like whoever's designed the tablet version has forgotten to create the icon here, or the image for the tablet version. Now this unfortunately is quite the mistake. Hopefully that's just a caching issue for whoever designed it. But that might be something they might want to have a look at, because no one will be seeing that image right now. It does have the little label there, so you get to find out what that is. And it hasn't broken all the design, so that's okay too. Pretty funny one. Let's see what else we can see here. So when you move down to tablet designs, one thing that I usually like to mention is that you should probably reduce the size of a hero or a banner. What ends up happening is a tablet obviously doesn't have as much horizontal and vertical space, but if you are creating a banner like this, what you could do is you could just decrease the amount of padding from the top and the bottom, and what you'll end up is maybe with a banner about this big, and this way you can have your call to actions appear much sooner here where you have them, as long as you know the image works. And let's cancel that out and have a look at what else we can see here for the tablet design. Yes, too much padding on the design. So another thing that you'll notice is that this is a bit of a UI issue. There is a button here. I'm not sure if you guys can see that because it has an opacity on it and it's very gray. And this is the issue, you know, it isn't very visible. It's actually right over here. If I can point it out, let's see. Right there, there it is. But because of the way it's been designed, it's not visible. And it's also sort of overflowing on the text, so it's making that PC text disappear a little bit. So this is something that I would probably say could do with a better design. Either it could be pushed further to the right here so that it doesn't overlap with the text, or it could be done with the little 3 circles like we have here in the hero, but currently the way it's not working is not working. Let's see what else the chat is saying here. So more padding on the banner. Sorry, too much padding on the banner. I agree with that. Pretty underwhelming coming from Microsoft so far. So yes, you could possibly see some other companies that are doing more in terms of their homepage design. And I suppose this is why I wanted to start off with Microsoft today, because there's so much that they can improve on in terms of UI and UX. And we'll probably have a look at some of the other ones later to see some of the things that they might be doing right and that maybe some of the things they're doing wrong too. But today is a Microsoft day. So let's see what else we have here. Checked, you'd be surprised after seeing the UI. The way they do this is nice in terms of the gradient indicating the scroll. So let's see, let's move down here a little bit. So here is another image that seems to be missing from the design. So I'm not too sure what that's meant to be. I guess this is meant to be the Office 365. The problem is that we don't have like a background image to at least show. So it just feels like there's a lot of white space here that's not applying, and this image isn't here, but that's okay. It's not the only image that's missing. We're also missing the Xbox image. We're also missing the Surface Pro X image. Now let me refresh that just to make sure it's not me. I'd love if you guys can test that out to see if that's working on your side, because I'm on the Australian based version and maybe there's something happening there that other people aren't getting. But for me, they're not working. So tell me in the chat if they're working for you guys or not. I'd love to know. So here, even the images is missing, link is broken. Yes, that's correct. Let's move on here to see what else we have. So these, at least, they're coming across okay. They're coming into 2 groups of columns and rows, so that's all right. Let's close this off here and cancel out these. It's broken on the Italian version as well. Well, that's definitely funny. Great UI, no photos to keep me thinking. That's some of the good comments we have here in the chat today. And we have the Kodu community here, which is Niall. So hello, how you going today? Microsoft and UX are two completely incompatible things is another statement there from the chat. Hopefully we can fix that up today. Now we've got another example here of a section which is in tablet view. But the problem we're having now is that this in tablet view feels like it's using too much space. So this, what I mean, is the space at the top and at the bottom. It makes this text here seem so tiny and insignificant. And when you're in tablet mode, this is why having it maybe shrunk down to just about this height would make it look a little bit better and allow for better scrolling when you're going through the page. But right now it's just a little bit too big. And because of that, it just doesn't look as good as it could. Let's see what else we have here. You can spell Microsoft without the letters U and X. Oh, very nice. I haven't heard that one before. Microsoft is hands down the one that could improve the most in terms of UX, is the nice way I'll put that. Let's move down to the next section here for business. Now, I assume there are some nice, beautiful pictures here. But because I'm on a tablet view today, I'm not going to be able to see these. But that's okay. We've figured that there is a little bit of an issue happening. They've got some technical difficulties. So what we might do is we might continue moving on to the next section. But it's good to know that at least over here, we scroll down a little bit further. So let's do that just over here. The Microsoft Teams section is working perfectly fine. This image, it's perfect. So if you're after something from Microsoft Teams is. Let's continue scrolling on to see what else we can see here on the tablet version. We have this section again here for Microsoft response to COVID. That's okay. Again, could use some more spacing here and some white space here, but we already went over that, so that's okay. And finally, our footer here. Oh, okay. Is that our footer? I think that's just our footer. I don't know if I can't scroll any further. Let's double check. So there's more happening here for this footer. There is definitely more happening here for the footer, but I'm not able to scroll to the bottom of this footer. So I don't know what kind of an issue is happening here. I'd love to know if anyone else can jump on a tablet and see if they can scroll past this bit here, because right now I can't do this, and I don't know if the page just stops here randomly without giving me the rest of the footer. So if you guys can check that in the chat, I'd love to know. Let's see what we have here in terms of the chat. Hi Adrian, you remind me of a comedian named Nick, except you are a Ninja developer in real life. Thanks. I like the Windows UI and the UX. Okay. I can view the images in tablet view in India. Okay, that's good to know. I loaded the site on Poland and the tablet version works fine. That's great. It seems like Microsoft just isn't fond of the Australian version, unfortunately. There are some small companies, blah, blah, blah. Yep. Let's move to the extensions. Here we go. So I'd still love to know if you guys are having any issues if you load up the site in tablet mode and you try to scroll past the bottom section here, because at this point I'm unable to scroll past it there. I'm just gonna have a quick drink, and if you guys have a look, so in the chat we're already getting I cannot scroll past this. Okay, that's good to know. What other comments are we having here? Max, I'm getting a bit of comments both from it working and not working, so let's give it a refresh. Hopefully it is just some caching that is happening, but I'm still getting an error here. I might even try to load it in incognito mode, and let's see if we pull it into tablet, if that works. So I'm loading it in incognito, and no, those images are definitely still not working in incognito mode either. And then we've got more comments here. I am unable to scroll past the footer. It might be because I'm zoomed in at 100%, so I'll unzoom that. And I seem to be able to scroll past now, but if I zoom in to say 125%, yeah, alright, that's a very odd issue where I'm not able to scroll past if I'm at 150%. That's not something that should happen. So I'm not sure what's causing that, but whoever found that in the chat, web up blog, well done. That is a very odd use case. They should remove that pixelated border when you click on something. Ah, yeah. Let's scroll up here. So we've had a look at the iPad version. Now we're going to go for a tablet version, or a phone version, sorry. So here is the iPhone version. Let's take a look at that now. I'm going to refresh this and resize it a little bit so that you guys can see this. How can I? 150. There we go. So hopefully you guys can see this in the chat. The first thing we have here is the menu with the bars here at the top left. So that looks perfectly fine. I'm okay with how this interacts. So that's okay. We've got our search here, and that seems to be working just fine. I'm pretty happy with that too. I've got a little shop button. That seems to take us to a different page. I wasn't expecting that. And we've got our user button here, so that takes me to my user page, I assume. So that's okay in terms of the top header here. But something I did notice is that this is not centered. There's more padding here. There's more margin here at the top. So maybe at the top here, it's about, say, 8 pixels. And at the bottom here, it's about 12 pixels. So what ends up happening is that the Microsoft logo and text isn't perfectly centered here. So I know that centering is hard in development, but this is just another use case of, having things perfectly aligned does go a long way, because the eye might just subtly pick up on it and feel like, hey, this doesn't look at the level of quality as it should be. Let's see what else we have. How do you come up with your amazing thumbnails? So usually what I do is I just quickly jump on Photoshop, think of what I'm going to do for the video, and just add the largest piece of text I can imagine over behind my head or in front of it, and that's usually how it goes. Yes, agreed. This is why Flexbox was created, to center things. So here we have our phone design, and we have a few things I wanted to point out here. This banner, it's perfectly fine, but it's actually being pushed out all the way here. The image changes and the text changes, but it almost feels like these are two separate sections. So what is a little bit confusing for me is the fact that the first thing I look at in terms of this design is this image here, but I've got no text, I've got no context at all, and I don't really know what's happening. This almost feels useless for me. So then my eyes move down here and have a look at this text here. And this text here looks perfectly fine. So my recommendation would be to completely get rid of this, maybe have it as a little icon here up there, and put this up, because right now I feel like it's just not providing the value that I would expect it to. What are you guys' thoughts? Let's change the camera angle there. Sure, let's do that. There we go. Hopefully that's better. So one of the things that I usually do when I'm designing stuff is scrutinize the perfection of each component. Yes, that's one of the best things you can do. It's really sitting down and thinking about it. Just thinking about, hey, if someone was coming on here, if they were my target audience, how would they look at this? What would they be thinking? And then sort of designing around that. Yes, it can be improved with some changes, agreed. Let's move on to this next section here. This, I think, looks okay. I don't mind that this is a list of items, but I think that it could be a lot better. There are so many different ways they could make this interesting. They could, for example, have 6 boxes or even 4 boxes here with the icons displayed nicely. But I guess a list does work in this case, so I'll just leave that as is. It does feel like there is a little bit, just a tad bit too much padding between this section and this section. Maybe if you could reduce it by, say, just about that much, that would look a lot better. But yeah, that's a nice list there. At least the icons look a little bit better, but SPNGs, they probably don't scale very well. Let's see what we have here in the comments. It seems like the design was developed by a trainee designer. Ooh, those are some harsh words. Let's see. Yes, it can be improved. Yeah, list is small. Yes. Adrian, can you review this site? Microsoftedge.com. All right, we might take a look at that in the next one, but let me quickly have a quick gander. And I assume that's this one here. Or maybe it's just Microsoft.com. Let's have a quick look. All right, yeah, I guess it's this one here. We'll maybe take a look at this one in a future video. Let's finish up here. So we've got this section here. What's interesting is that we saw before in the desktop design that we didn't have enough space, or we had too much space between this section. And it made it feel like it was a little bit disconnected because the title was almost like about 60 pixels down. But funny enough, they've actually fixed that up in the mobile version. So there's a lot less space here. And this one box feels like it's a lot more connected to the text itself and looks a lot better. It's like they've implemented those suggestions that I said on the tablet version, sorry, on the desktop version, on the mobile version. So that's interesting. Let's keep moving down here and see what else we have. Space is a little bit too much between the list items. Yes, in terms of this list item here, they could probably reduce it by 1/3 and that would look a lot better. Right now, it feels like you could fit almost another entire item here. And that's a little bit too much. So for a list like this, a little bit less margin between each one of these, a little bit less line height would go a long way to feel it more like a connected section. Let's see what else we have here. Let's scroll down. So these sections we've already looked at. In terms of the sizing here, I think they look a lot better on the mobile version than the desktop version. And then we have this section here for the latest PC. Now, something I've noticed for this section here is that this image feels like it's tiny little, with a little bit of padding here at the top and the bottom. And then this piece of text has the most padding I've ever seen from the top and the bottom. So that feels a little bit bizarre for me. It's not exactly how I would do it. Personally, I think that this should only have about half as much padding. And I think that would look a lot better than how much it currently has, especially on the mobile version. It's a little bit too much. And then the other thing that I would probably recommend over here is if we could even pull this image in as a transparent image inside this whole block. So it feels like one connected block, because like in the header earlier, it feels like two disjointed blocks. And there's just a little bit of a disconnect there. So that's something useful that I would recommend in this case. Let's see what can be some inspiration for product sites. Too much padding in the latest PC. So yes, we've got more people agreeing there's a little bit too much padding there. Let's keep moving up. Oh, sorry, down. And something I did just notice is that when we've moved over here to the mobile version, all my icons and images are working again now. So it seems like just the tablet version of those were not working, which is a very strange thing. Let's keep moving down here and having a look. So we've got our for business section. That's okay. And finally, we have our Microsoft response to COVID. Now, this section feels very odd because there's almost no padding here between the next section and this section. And even just having a look at this section, it's inconsistent with the section above. So this section above it, just over here, this has almost 120 pixels in padding between the text. And then we scroll down a little bit further, and this section for the COVID has about 1/5 of that, which is tiny. There's even a disconnect there between the padding at the top of this section, which is about, say, 20 pixels, and the padding down here, which is only about 5 or 6 pixels. So that's really odd. for this section. It's just a little bit inconsistent. And again, this is where consistency is very important when you're doing UI, because the user will pick this up and go, hey, this looks a little bit odd. And it just makes the website not look as good as it could. Let's see, what do we have here? Too much padding on latest PCs. They should have a congruent background between the image of the background and the box below it. Yes, I agree. Having two background images is what is causing that to look a little bit like it's two separate boxes. The COVID response section looks clumsy and a little bit strange. Yes, I agree with that as well. Microsft section here is not looking good. It feels like it has 4 items here. So yes, also agree with that. So here, this is this next section we're looking at. And this is where we've got a little bit of weird wrapping happening. It's almost like they never even considered this properly for a mobile design. They just left the styling and went, responsive design, what's that anyway? So for this, obviously there's a few things we could do. We can move this text here into the center, and then we can have the icons here nicely below. Obviously, right now what's happening is that we simply don't have enough space for our last icon here. So it's just been pushed by itself to the bottom there, and this text has been pushed to another line. So it just doesn't look very good. And when we do this as well, it feels like it's a little bit off center, because there's only a tiny little bit of padding here on the left, and there's heaps of padding here on the right. So all of this is looking a little bit clumsy, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement here. Let's see what other people are saying here on the chat as well. Yes, it's pretty funny. I've got people laughing at this, but that is what it is. The icon wrapping is not good at all. They can make the text go to the very top and align the icons below. Yes, I completely agree. And finally, we've got our super massive footer. This thing is probably like bigger than some websites I've visited. I think there's just a little bit too much in this footer. Probably between the line height and the spacing between each block and just how much there is, it's just a little bit too much. As always, I still think that having a good search or a contact section here would be useful. They have a career section, have a security section, but what if you need to just, find out some information or shoot off an email or something like that? So having that in a website, doesn't matter what it is also very useful. Let's see if there's a support section. So we've got account profile, tracking returns. I'm not seeing a support section. I would say that's the second most important, because half of the issues, here we go, Microsoft Store. So maybe that's as close as we get, but that's okay. Let's see what we have for the comments here. The footer is too overwhelming and the spacing is a little bit too much. So yes, I agree with that. Okay, I think that's a pretty good review so far. Let's just jump back to the regular view. Where's my console here? Okay, there's another thing I'd like to point out. This is more like a usability thing. Everything here on the left side of the menu, all these items here, they're all clickable and they take you to another page. So this, is a sort of design aspect that I'm used to. On the other side here, all of these items, if I select them, they're clickable and they don't take me to another page. That's fair enough, except for the cart. And the cart randomly decides to take me to another page. Now, I know that it's probably not a big deal, but it's again one of those things that is consistency. If you're going to make all these sections on the right empty, why not just have a drop down there for the cart saying it's empty? That's what most websites would probably do, and then you can select to check out or view what your cart is. But this, I feel, could be optimized better with a drop down. Let's see what we have here. The icon wrapping is not good at all. Footer spacing. All right, great. So far, I think pretty good design review here of the Microsoft website. I've to mention this, make sure you guys hit like, and if you haven't already, make sure you guys subscribe. I like to always say that. I'm going to also ask for some comments and feedback of what you guys think of the Microsoft website, and if there's anything I missed here, because I'd love to make sure I go over all of it so that we can give them some good reviews here. Thomas is in the chat here as well. Hello, Thomas. I think that the inconsistency of the site is because different editors are producing different content on the site. They probably don't know anything about the code or the design. It's simply templates they use. Interesting take. The Microsoft site is the dashed border when you click any link. So let's have a look. Oh, we do? Wow, I haven't seen that before. So if we select it, we have a huge black box with a weird hover over it. It's very interesting. It doesn't look very good for the text, that's for sure. I guess that's maybe for who want to know what the surface area is there for clickability, but that's an interesting one. I'm not too sure what to make of that. A lot of the times if I'm clicking a link, I'm just going to click it, so I might not see that. But I feel like the active click state could look a little bit better there. Let's have a look at the header. Oh, there we go. So if I click on the header, we get a weird box that appears that's dashed. And it's quite large as well. You can't click on the outline of it. But I guess I'm not sure. I think that again could have a better design. Maybe if there was like a slight background color or something like that, that would be useful. Let's see what else we have here. The tonality of the images and the overall tonality is off. There is no common thread on the website. So yes, that is another thing, that each section feels independent. Like there are different departments just whacking stuff on the homepage, and there is no broad image. No single person has come in with an overall purpose what the homepage should be, and let's have a uniform structure to all of it. So that is always very useful. Okay, this is great. Well, look guys, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This was really fun to do, and maybe I'll do some more design reviews. Maybe we'll do Apple next, but this was great. I'll stick around in the chat for a bit longer in case you have any questions, but I hope you guys like this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.